Okay, so as you guys can see in my title, today we're going to be covering the fake 9/11 survivor. And I actually came across this story randomly online probably about like a week ago, and I was a little bit curious. There was a video, I watched a little bit of the video, and I read some articles, and then I heard that there was actually a documentary that was made about it a couple years back, I think in like 2012. So the more I dug into it, the more fucking crazy it just gets. So we're gonna talk about Tanya Head, the 9/11 survivor. Let's just go back, we're gonna go back to 9/11. It's 2001, and we're gonna go to New York City. So we have Tanya Head here, 9/11 survivor. 96th floor was when the first plane hit North Tower at 8:46 a.m. A woman named Tanya Head was on the South Tower, 78th floor, waiting for the express elevator so she can quickly exit out of the building, when she heard a woman yelling, "There's another plane coming! There's another plane coming!" Tanya recalled that nobody believed the woman at first. Then the second plane hit. She was knocked into the wall as the tip of the wing knocked into the sky lobby. She claims to feel an immense amount of pressure, air being sucked out of her lungs. And next thing she knows, she felt like she was flying through the air. She saw her assistant getting decapitated right in front of her eyes. Holy shit, can you fucking imagine that? And as she was panicking and heading towards the exit, she ran into a critically burned man who knew that he wasn't going to make it. He gave her a wedding ring. Now I'm going to read this in quotes.
Crawling through the chaos and carnage on the 78th floor that morning, she said, she encountered a dying man who handed her his inscribed wedding ring, which she later returned to his widow. Tanya remarks pain on her shoulder. Someone was hitting her. A younger-looking man shows up to aid her.
For some reason, she was on fire. A volunteer shows up. He extinguishes the fire that was on her, and he helps her down the stairs. She would later call this man the man with the red bandana. Here's another quote that we have from Tanya.
I kept thinking about my fiance, about our wedding. I wanted to wear that white dress and swear my love for him. Something gave me the strength to get up. I believe today that it was my fiance on his way to heaven. A fireman took me in his arms. Outside, he handed me over to another fireman. He was carrying me towards the ambulance when the tower came crashing down. He found cover under the truck and covered me with his body. Ooh, so heroic. We were engulfed, and soon it was pitch black and impossible to see or breathe. We shared his mask until we were rescued. Next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital.
5-6 days later, depending on which sources you read, I guess it's a little bit hazy for Tanya, which is understandable. If you're, a survivor, something traumatic happened to you, you're not gonna have good fucking memory. You're not gonna know how many days you were actually in the hospital for and things like that, right? Right? So Tanya woke up in the hospital in the burn unit. She would later find out that Dave, her fiance, had died in the North Tower. She was one of 19 victims that survived. Now, 19 victims because she was on the 76th floor, and apparently she would be one of 19 victims who were on the 76th floor, point of impact, or above. Only 19 people survive. Yeah, so very little people. Now, what if I told you guys that was just all a fucking lie? Holy shit. So when I read this, I was just like, holy fuck, like, oh my god, this is crazy. I went to school with a guy that lied like this. He was in an underground racing league when he was 10. His grandmother held all his money and cars until he was 18. I've got a few more stories he told as well. It sounds like someone who watches a lot of soaps and reads a lot of romance novels. Yeah, dude. I think that this story was pretty interesting to cover because I think we all have at least one person out there that we've encountered that is done this before, that just lies incessantly, and they just can't stop. And even though people around them just knows how ridiculous it is, and they don't really react, because the best way to counter these people is you just kind of ignore them. You're just like, okay, whatever, and they'll just keep lying and lying and lying. No one really is paying attention, but it's like they don't know anything else but to lie. So I think it was really interesting because we all know someone out there that's a pathological liar, and so I thought it'd be really interesting to talk about Ms. Tanya Head. She was born on July 31st in 1973. She told others that she is a daughter of a diplomat. She claims to have graduated from Harvard. And not only that, she got her MBA from Stanford. Holy shit, she's really smart. Oh my goodness. She was engaged to Dave, her fiance, which we previously mentioned before. Dave was in the North Tower, and the North Tower was struck first. Dave was her fiance. They shared an apartment together in New York City, and they had a dog. Oh my gosh, they had a dog named Elvis. What a cute name. Tanya barely survived and was left with a horrendous scar. So she actually had like burn scars on her arms, and it actually, like, she was actually like quite disfigured, but I don't know if you can see it in any of the pictures. I don't think so. I don't think I found any. She's actually really detailed with her story. She said that she was part of the mergers team at Merrill Lynch, who had one of the offices in one of the Twin Towers, and and everyone except her perished in the South Tower. Her assistant, Christine, who we mentioned earlier, she saw her assistant getting decapitated right in front of her eyes. That's actually a lot to be seeing, you know, when something's happening so fast and so quickly. Like, it's as if you're in a movie and everything's happening in slow motion. After 9/11, she created an online support group for 9/11 survivors. And we're going to talk about this other guy. His name is Gary God, I'm going to butcher his name. I'm so sorry. He's an actual survivor. So he would meet with Tanya Head. They both had their own survivor network, and they both merged it together. Jerry was the founder of the World Trade Center Survivors Network. I think what happened was, like, the members, they ended up being more interested in Tanya's story, and she actually ended up being the president instead of him, like, months later. This guy had his own survivors network. He merges with another woman, and she ends up taking over, and she ends up being the president because he loses the bid for re-election. And so, but then you find out that she's not even a real fucking survivor. Like, holy shit. So not only that, Giuliani, Pataki, and this is, what's his name again? Bloomberg, right? They all came to come visit, and she was actually the chosen one to give the tour. And so, because, you know, she actually became the most famous survivor of the 9/11 attacks. And so she led the tour, you know, got to meet all these famous people. And this is a quote that her friend said. Her friend said,
"It was a huge event. The center staff asked me to stay by her side so I can keep her away from the press. She was just too fragile to tell her story to anyone except the dignitaries. Tanya gave a brilliant tour, but suffered a full-scale panic attack immediately after. Reliving that day sometimes was just too much for her."
Oh my God. Can you just imagine her just like faking all this? Oh gosh. Listening to the quotes of her friends talking about how, like, oh my God, like, I was with her this day, and, like, you know, she was just like telling her story, she was crying, I held her in my arms, and like, but then you realize it's just all bullshit. Like, I just feel so bad for the people that were just duped by her. She struggles to tell the story without falling apart emotionally, and says she owes her life to the young man who aided her, known famously as the Red Bandana Man. So in retelling her story, she would recall blood, body parts. I crawled through all of that. It was like a horror movie. People were mounted on top of each other. The smell of burnt skin was gagging. I kept thinking about my fiance, Dave, about our wedding. Tanya recalls,
"I wanted to wear that white dress and swear my love to him."
oh gosh, this lady. Al Siebert of survivorguidelines.org was contacted by Tanya in 2004. She wanted to speak to him about the New York. Oh, she wanted him to come into New York and do like be like a guest speaker to the survivors group that was there. So they met in 2004. He met her. You know, he heard her story. He thought she had the most dramatic story. It was like really sad. She lost her husband, and now she's basically just trying to build her life all over again. So this is what he said in a quote. So this is Al Siebert.
"After I returned home, Tanya sent me a long email on September 2nd, 2004, thanking me for my sessions and support for the survivors group. In that letter, she stated,"
so this is her letter, okay? This is what she writes.
"I think I already told you that Dave's family doesn't want to go to the site this year. They get heartbroken with the way it looks. They don't like to see the trains, the construction trucks go by in their son's final resting place. Instead, I propose that we spend the day quietly at the Hamptons, a coastal place in Long Island where Dave and I bought a house. Dave used to love that place. We had a service there in the morning at a local church. My friends are driving out for the service as well. The priest is very nice, knows us well, so we asked him if we can have a mass and a memorial service at the same time. He agreed. This means we'll have friends and family come up and talk about Dave, and we'll talk about his favorite song. So again, Dave's already passed away. In the evening, we're going to go have a sunset ceremony where we'll congregate at the beach and we'll throw flowers and messages for Dave into the ocean. His old band will play and we'll have few beers and a barbecue just as he liked it. Well then, get a fire going and we'll talk about him all night until the sunrise.
Hi, BCDE. Thank you so much for the follow. If you guys are also new here, don't forget to hit the follow button. Okay, so we keep hearing about Dave. Let's go over to who Dave is. Dave, sometimes husband, sometimes fiance. It really depends on what day you ask her about, what day you ask her about her husband, says fiance. So it depends if she gets her story straight or not. So I'm going to put a picture of this little cute toy taxi there, and I'm not going to tell you why it's on the screen, but I'll tell you in a moment. So let's talk about Dave. This is a story about the man that passed away. He was her fiance. So she says they met Dave. Her and Dave met while they were arguing over a taxi. They live in New York City. After that, he gave her his business card, and in a huff, she threw that business card away. Later, they ended up in the same business meeting. Wow, this is like serendipity. And they just started dating. They lived together in the East Side. They had a golden retriever, that we mentioned earlier. Golden retriever named Elvis. Apparently, she had a really good relationship with his family. It seems like everything's working really well for her. She meets this handsome guy. They both are, very successful in their lives and their jobs. They have a place together they're living, and they have a golden retriever dog, iconic dog of the American family. And before 9/11, she actually said that her and Dave went to Hawaii, and they actually did do a little ceremony together where they would get married. But of course, it was not legally binding. It was not legally binding, so there's no record or anything. And they had their wedding date set for October 2001. But unfortunately, since 9/11 happened a month before, that never happened. So this is going to be from her friend. Her friend says, yet when a friend visited her plush apartment near Central... Oh, this is from article. Sorry, not a friend. Yet when a friend visited her plush apartment near Central Park, there was no sign of the dog. People noticed, but didn't question her. When one day, Dave was her fiance, and then maybe the next day, she'd call her Dave her husband. So she was never really consistent, although, honestly, to me, if that happened, if I was talking to someone and they're a widower and they sometimes refer to them as husband or fiance, I don't know, I probably wouldn't think of it too much. If I just be like, there's just probably some inconsistencies, but it wouldn't really bother me that much to be like, oh my God, you're a fucking liar. So she says that Dave was a consultant at Deloitte working on the 100th floor in the North Tower. As previously mentioned, Dave did not make it out at all. The last three, oh God, this part is, okay, so this explains the yellow toy car. The last 3 anniversaries at Ground Zero, she places a small yellow cab toy and flowers at the site in honor of Dave. Because, that's how they met. They met fighting over a taxi. So what she does is she gets a little toy taxi car and she places it there for Dave. She's doing it for Dave. Oh my God, give her all the social credits. Oh my God, doing it for Dave. By the way, so she does have some sort of scarring right there in her arm that she claims that it was burns from being in the building. But I don't know, if you look at it pretty closely, does it look like burns? Can I put this up on the screen? Oh my gosh, this is a little golden retriever that I found online randomly. Friends would account that when they came to visit her apartment, her dog, Elvis, the golden retriever, they realized that he was never there for some reason. And whenever they would ask, oh, where's your dog? She would just be like, oh yeah, our maid is taking the dog out for a walk right now. For some reason, the friends just never saw the dog, ever. Another thing too, because we're talking about Dave. His friends, his family, they also They never heard of Tanya. They have no idea who she is. They never recalled him having a trip to Hawaii. He even had a roommate that he lived with. The roommate had no idea who the fuck she is, and I don't know. There were some other suspicions that we had, that they had as well. For some reason, she never shared any other information about Dave. They don't know his last name. They've never met his family. His family was never present at any of the events that they had. And, same thing. Dave's obituary never mentioned Tanya at all. Never mentioned the engagement, never mentioned her name, or never even being married. Now, going back to the founder, Jerry asked Tanya for Dave's last name when questions surfaced regarding Tanya's fiance. She gave it to him without hesitation, and he was like, oh, okay. So he did a little bit of research, and he did find a Dave with the last name that she gave. And this man felt so bad that he questioned one of the survivors. And there was actually a quote that says,
"And there he was, and I said, well, why am I even doing this? I felt bad that I was even suspicious."
This guy felt so bad that he questioned the survivor. And when he did his own little research, he did find out that a Dave did exist with that last name. I think he looked at the obituaries, and then he looked at like the portraits of grief as well. It was like a little mini series that had like the obituaries of all the 9/11 victims. Okay, yeah, that's what I have here. So next part, we're gonna go talk about, we're talking about Tanya. We're talking about a man who did exist, but maybe not in the capacity that she said. Now we're gonna talk about someone who was a fucking hero, okay? A really fucking awesome dude. And we're gonna talk about Wells Crowther. He was the guy who was known as the man with the red bandana, the one that Tanya said that, literally saved her that day. He was the guy that like escorted her down the staircase. And so later on, she would say that he was the man with the red bandana. He was very gregarious amongst his friends and family. He was a captain of the high school, I think it was like lacrosse team. By 16, he joined the volunteer fire department. It was his dream to be a firefighter. And then I think this is probably like his work snapshot. It looks like something that would be like a work snapshot that you would have to do. However, he graduated in 1999. He graduated from Boston College. He was working as an equities trader on the 104th floor in the South Tower. So his father recalled that his son wanted to quit his job, actually, and he wanted to become a New York City firefighter. Wells was known as the man with the red bandana. A bunch of other survivors, they seem to have a similar theme in their story. Someone with the red bandana, like, saved me. They, came, got me, and, helped me down and stuff like that. And so I think as that story circulated, Tanya was like, oh yeah, I had a guy that saved me too. He was also a guy with a red bandana. Oh my God, we were probably saved by the same person. And so that's probably what happened. Apparently he saved at least 18 people. He made multiple rounds going up and down the building. But unfortunately for him, he did not make it out, unfortunately. His body was recovered months later on the ground floor. Him and the bodies of other firefighters that he was working with that day. He did spend his last breaths doing what he's always wanted to do. It was his dream to be a firefighter, and he died amongst the other firefighters. His last message was a voice message for his mom. It's really sad. It said, "Mom, this is Wells. I want you to know that I'm okay." So they did later made him an honorary New York City firefighter. So that was pretty cool. So his father met with Tanya. They arranged a private dining room at Princeton Club because Tanya said she wasn't comfortable meeting in a public setting. I wish I was capable of being less honest, but this level of lying has to be, I think some people have levels of dishonesty in them, but it's usually just white lies or sometimes just embellishments. But when you're just oh gosh, this at this point, it's quite malicious, it's involving so many people and stuff, and just basically just schmozzing them. So this is a quote that he says.
During the dinner, she said she still had her burned clothing and that she was going to send us a piece of it on a plaque. Says it was one of the last things our son had touched, he recalled. She explained that her clothes were on fire and that our son took a jacket and put out the flames. She told us that she said, "Don't leave me," and he replied, "I won't. Don't worry. I'll get you down."
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So let's talk about who the real Tanya is. To begin with, her name, Tanya, that was fabricated. That's not even her name. Her birth name was Alicia Esteve Head. She actually comes from a very prominent family in Barcelona. They're very wealthy. They have money. She was the youngest of about 5 or 6 siblings. I feel like when you're the youngest sibling, you're either doted by your parents and you're like the baby, or you're like the neglected one where no one really cares about you. I feel like it's usually one or the other. So we don't know what kind of dynamic that she had with her family. But we did do a little bit of digging because she claimed that she was a daughter of a diplomat. That was false, of course. She did have a father, though. Her father and her brother, actually, they were actually involved in a financial scandal in 1992. It says that they were jailed for forging documents. Other sources mentioned they were caught laundering 24 million state euros. And this is a quote from, I think it was from someone that knew her when they were young.
The family lived a prosperous life, moving between their sprawling Barcelona apartment, their villa in Mallorca, and a country estate called El Campesino. Life revolved around yachting, horses, tennis at exclusive clubs. Alicia was her parents' jewels. Okay, so her parents was like, she was the youngest one, so they loved her. She was spoiled and granted every wish, no matter how extravagant. During summer holidays in Mallorca, her family flew in her 3 horses from Barcelona rather than listen to her whine about missing them. On 16th birthday present, she got a diamond-encrusted Rolex worth tens of thousands of dollars.
She attended the University of Barcelona. Later on, she does enroll in a master's program at a private institute in Barcelona, Catalonia, Spain, in 2001. What? 2001? Wait a second. 2001? Wasn't it the same time that 9/11 happened? 2001? So she was in Spain in 2001. She wasn't even in the same state. She wasn't even in the same fucking country. Bro, she didn't even get to fucking US until like, I think it was like 2003. She's been in Spain the entire fucking time. She wasn't even there. As a matter of fact, yeah, she didn't come into 2003. Is this an article excerpt? This might have been an article excerpt. Yesterday, La Vanguardia, a newspaper in Barcelona, reported that Ms. Head has been known as Alicia Esteve Head. Ms. Head told colleagues in New York that scars and marks on her arms was from the terror attack. La Vanguardia quoted an unnamed former colleague as saying that Ms. Head said those scars was from a high-speed crash in a Ferrari. She used to say that they had to look for the arm and reattach it. The colleague is quoted as saying in the article. Oh. People didn't want to ask. They didn't want to pry even further. So honestly though, if you came across someone and they gave you like a sad story or they told you that they were a victim of something, it's generally pretty rude to, inquire some more. It's generally pretty rude to pry, maybe ask too many questions, because a lot of people, what we tend to do is we tiptoe around other people, right? We don't want to offend them. We don't want them to, be even more hurt. So if like someone tells you that like, oh, like I was a victim of an assault, my dad used to beat me and stuff like that, you're not going to be like, oh, he beat you? When? Where are the scars? Where are the wounds? When did that happen? Can your family corroborate that? Can your friends corroborate? Like, you're not going to ask all those prying questions. You're just going to be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That sucks. Just like things like that. Most people aren't really going to pry. So I think that's the reason why this woman got away with it for so fucking long. Because I think people did notice that there were inconsistencies, but they probably just swept it underneath the rug. So, oh my gosh. So this is the first article that ever came out. And I'm only going to read it, not because, we're jerking this woman off, but we're reading it because this is the first time that the public has heard of her. This is the first time New York Times have heard of her. It's going to be cringe, though, because, we all know that it's all bullshit. But the title reads, An Amazing Woman and Her Smile, by Michael Daly, New York Daily News, September 7, 2006. The momentum of her memory sometimes caused Tanya Head to tell a tour group about her horribly burned man. Huh? Oh, I read that wrong. Okay. The momentum of her memory sometimes caused Tanya Head to tell a tour group about the horribly burned man. I need to zoom in this one. I can't see this shit. I need my glasses. And I'm sorry, there's some ads here. There you go. Can you guys read that? The momentum of her memory sometimes caused Tanya had to tell a tour group about the horribly burned man who handed her his wedding ring as she escaped the South Tower. On occasion, she would also tell visitors that her own husband perished in the North Tower. She always began by introducing herself to those who come for a first-person account of 9/11 from one of the 122 volunteer guides at the New Tribute World Trade Visitor Center. My name is Tanya, and I'm going to be your tour guide today, she said in the other afternoon. I was there at the towers. I am a survivor. I'm going to tell you about that. God, oh my God, dude, we went to go to the, we went to Ground Zero, but we never took the tour there. Fuck, man, I kind of wish I took the tour. She led the group of dozens around the perimeter of what is no longer there. An observant visitor would have noticed that Head's right hand was scarred from the injury suffered that morning 5 years ago. Those of us who were here always talk about how blue the sky was, she began. She had been at an 8:30 a.m. Oh God, it says, which of the Pokemon's your favorite? What? Meeting on the 96th floor of the South Tower. She says, we heard very loud sounds coming from outside the meeting room. A plane had struck the North Tower, which was, by her precise account, 113 feet away. Damn, she did the math on this? Holy shit. The fire was so intense the windows of the towers were too hot to touch. She saw people begin to jump from the North Tower. And it wasn't just one. It wasn't just two, she said. She went on to the 78th floor, where several hundred people waited in the sky lobby for the express elevators. This woman started saying, there's another plane coming. There's another plane coming. Head recalled. We didn't believe her at first. Now, she says, the tip of the wing tore through the crowded sky lobby. The first thing you feel is a tremendous increase in pressure, all the air being sucked out of your lungs. The next thing you feel is flying through the air. She was knocked unconscious and awoke in searing pain. A young man was patting out her burning clothes. His name was Wells Crowther. He wore a red bandana his father had given him to filter smoke should he ever get caught in a fire. He saved dozens that day. He will forever be known as the man with the red bandana, she recalled. His calm made me calm. She also says, burned, bleeding, nearly blinded by dust, she struggled toward the stairways. Blood, body parts. I crawled through all of that. I realized everyone around me was dying. The woman... Look at the artwork for this. The woman who wasn't there. Let's talk about Angelo, I'm going to mess up the name, Guglielmo. Angelo Guglielmo Jr. was a friend of Tanya's. Apparently the two had met, and Guglielmo was already known director who previously made a film about 9/11, focusing on the victims and the first aid teams that responded. Tanya had urged the filmmaker about making a documentary about her. Damn, saying she always dreamed in starring in one. Does she think she's starring in like a novella or something? Good Lord. Guglielmo agrees and begins filming Tanya and have her tell the story. So this explains why we had footages of her earlier, giving the interviews and stuff like that, because I think that was from the director. I think this is when he was filming her. However, this is the very same director that would end up pivoting the narrative of the film and actually covering how fraudulent she was during this entire thing that went on. Didn't her family see her lying on TV? None of them stopped her. Dude, I don't know. I have no idea. Hold on. I think we got to her friends, but not sure if that's the yeah. New York Times were baffled that they never heard of her before. After 9/11, they interviewed everyone who had been in the towers during the attack, and they'd never heard of Tanya before. And, New York Times, they're quite thorough. They know what they're doing. They reached out for multiple interviews to Tanya and later to the members of the Survivors Network. However, she became very fucking upset. I wonder why. And she began hysterically emailing everyone. This is what it says right here in this article. In response, Tanya sent out a mass email. Jerry B., a survivor from the 82nd floor? I thought it was 90-something floor. Okay. 82nd floor of the North Tower, paraphrases the email. These reporters are out to get me. Please don't share my information about me publicly. Oh, I wonder why. But what I don't understand is that Why would you want to do a documentary about yourself? There's gonna be so many eyes on you, but yet you don't want to do a interview with New York Times. Her friends in the group did not understand why she was so upset. They told her she needs to speak to the reporters to set the record straight. One friend encouraged her to get a lawyer if she was so afraid of being libeled. Head did so, and the friend went with her for moral support. However, upon speaking to the lawyer, the friend realized Head was telling the lawyer a different story that she's been telling everyone in the survivors group and the media. Head and Dave were not in fact married or engaged. She changed her story and said she's only known Dave for a couple of weeks. Now, Head wasn't actually working for Merrill Lynch, but now she says that she was only there to apply for an internship. She knows she's about to get caught, so she's got to backtrack on these lies now. But her friend's right there. I don't know why she just didn't have her friend leave the room while she told the lawyers all these lies. Like, why would you keep the friend there in the room with you when the friend already knows? So she canceled interviews with New York Times multiple of times, and when they were actually able to get her on a phone conversation, she said she never filed claims with the Federal Victim Compensation Fund, saying that she's never done anything illegal. So quite interesting, right? It's like, oh, so that's all you care about? You care about the fact that, like, just because you didn't do anything illegal, it's not wrong? She also said that she was employed by Merrill Lynch during that time. But guess what? Merrill Lynch, they never heard of you. As a matter of fact, apparently Merrill Lynch didn't even have an office in that physical location. There was no details as well about the man whose ring she returned. You know, the man that was burned and he had like a ring with the inscriptions inside? No details about that. She never talked about which hospital she was treated at, and then she never talked about who else that she knew in the South Tower. It was just always her, Dave, and she had an assistant who was decapitated. That's it. No one else. Now let's talk about the scars. So we briefly mentioned the scars earlier. Maybe it was in a horrific accident in a Ferrari. But apparently, it was during a car accident. She was cruising along the coast of Spain with her friends. The doctors did have to attach it, I guess, because it was kind of falling off almost, and they did use skin grafts. But I think she fabricated a story saying the arm completely was severed, and they had to find it, and then she had to put it back. But I think the arm was still attached. They just had to use skin grafts, kind of like make sure it's like fully attached. She would tell the variations of the stories where she was with. She would say that she was with a handsome boyfriend. It was in a car accident, or it was like a horseback riding incident. Her childhood friends outed her by saying that she would often lie that she had a wealthy, handsome boyfriend, but whom they've never met. And another story that she had was that her boyfriend was a neurosurgeon. They crashed while driving his Ferrari, driving almost 200 kilometers an hour. What is that in miles per hour? Like 170, 160. Does anyone know the conversion for that? Oh gosh, okay. So these are some of the comments from her friends in New York City, not like her friends from Spain. These are friends from New York City. So, I've heard her story over and over, said Janice Salento, a social worker, board member of the World Trade Center Survivors Network. I've been there anytime she needed someone to listen to, even at 3 a.m. She has stolen my time and my soul, she said. Fuck, man. Imagine being for someone for how many amount of days, how many amount of hours, 3 a.m. She's fucking crying. She said she lost her husband, but it's all fake. Here's another excerpt. I did once see Tanya on a chilly New York evening. I was taking a look at her apartment block near Central Park when she suddenly emerged. She was in a company of an elderly-looking woman with whom she boarded a bus and traveled to a nearby pizza parlor. Her clothes were unremarkable. She struck me as nondescript and underwhelming. This matched what I heard later. Few people, even though they had been with her many times, could remember any distinctive about her. Her lipstick, her clothes. It was as if Tanya Head was her story. Without that, there was little left. Oh, I think there's a typo there. Couldn't remember anything distinctive.